Hello and welcome to Social Media for International Schools. I'm Derek Harrell from AAIE. I'm joining from London today. Before we get started, I wanted to let you all know that you can ask questions in the chat section of the Zoom window. So if you're watching from Zoom, at the bottom of the window, you should be able to click on the word chat. There you would be able to ask questions during the webinar, but they may not be answered until the end of the webinar when we have a question and answer session. Leading today's webinar is Silvia Tolisano, who works with AAIE in a lot of different capacities. She's not only our social media manager, but she does a lot of professional development, including our Summer Institute that will be held in Fort Lauderdale in June. Silvia is known in the international school world and regional conferences, not only for her social media work and consulting, but also as a publisher. Her most recent books, Digital Storytelling Tools for Educators, and as a co-author of Documenting Learning, Making Thinking Visible, Meaning, Shareable, and Amplified, are both available. We are really excited to learn from Silvia today with this webinar, and I hope you are too. Silvia, you there?
I am here.
Great, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Sounds great, thank you, Derek. Okay, so welcome. Welcome to this webinar about social media for international schools. And just to give you a little background, I started as a blogger over 10 years ago, sharing my thinking and my learning. And then not much later, Twitter appeared on the scene. And I have found that it sounds cliche, but one of my best learning has happened on Twitter over the past 10 years. So I have made connections with other educators, with schools. We coordinated on projects with each other and really worked on being able to find new forms of learning through social media. And I'm at the point where I couldn't even imagine not being connected through these channels to be able to connect teachers that I work with, connect schools that I work with, and try to find ways how to amplify learning and how to amplify communication through these channels. So this is kind of what today is a little bit about that I want to share with you. That we start looking at social media not from the perspective of all the things that kids could do wrong, or we could do wrong, or parents could do wrong on social media, but finding ways of how to use social media to model new forms of literacies, finding a way how we can shift our minds of looking social media as all the things that could go wrong with digital citizenship, of how kids could upload content that would damage their reputation, that they would use it for not so great ways of communicating, and how to really move it from digital citizenship to a social leadership mindset. How can we use social media to help our kids connect with the world and connect it in good ways that without these channels would not be possible otherwise. So that's kind of the idea. How can we use social media channels to document our learning, to share the learning, and to amplify the learning itself? And as a school, how can we use social media for branding, and also to record institutional memory and share that? So that's kind of the idea that I want to talk around a little bit. What can international educators do to connect themselves? And then what can the school do to use social media to, again, to model for the students to model and educate parents who also did not grow up with, most of them, maybe the ones from the younger ones now are starting to come into our schools, that they have a better idea, but we have not really grown up with social media to use it for academic purposes, to use it for learning. And so that's kind of the idea that in the next 20 minutes I wanted to share with you, to plant some seeds. Obviously this is not a full workshop or anything, but hopefully it'll plant some seeds that allow you to dig into a little deeper and look for more resources and ideas on your own, or connect with me later. That's the idea. Eric Shaninger, which by the way, I want to give you a little plug-in for his book, that he co-wrote with Trish Rubin, called Branded. Highly recommend this book. It talks about branding in education, and again using social media to do that, to be able to share the story of your school, share the story of yourself as a professional learner, as a professional educator. And one of the things, as you can see here on the slides, if you do not tell your story, someone else will. That's kind of his thinking, that school teachers, they do need to take it into their own hands to be able to tell the story of them as a learner and as a learning community, and not leave it up to chance that someone else is going to tell that story for them. And it's really this whole idea that we need to start to see social media not as a threat, but as a tool for storytelling. It's a tool for communication, a tool that allows us to connect with others on their platforms and to reach more people than we could ever do before. So that's kind of the idea. How do we make that mind shift to see social media only as a tool, and it's only going to be as good as the person who uses it, and they know how to tell the story on different platforms and with different individual tools. Jill Berkowitz and Ann Myers are other two that I found very interesting, the way they, I guess they articulated the need for the leaders in a school of having that skill to tell stories, and having that skill to read and write in different forms. Again, when we went to school, being literate meant to be able to read and write and express your ideas, usually in text or in oral communication that you have with people that you're sitting next to, that you're sitting face to face with. But all of this has changed. We are now needing the skills to be able to read and write and express our ideas, communicate our ideas in ways that in media, not just text and print, but to be able to read and write in images, in video, in a podcast, in audio, in ways that we just never learned. And it's really a way for us, we need to start asking, are we literate enough to do that? And if we're not, if we can't do it, we need to be able to find the people who can do it for us, how we wanted the story to be told, and not somebody else. So that's kind of the idea, learning how to tell stories about our school, about learning, and again, also to model that literacy for our students. One way, I believe, is to see as a school, it's not the job of one person. Yes, you can hire a social media coordinator for your school, but in the end, it's too big of a job for one person to do. This needs to be a collaborative effort. And the whole idea of building a team who will contribute, who you crowdsourcing the stories from is really essential. Otherwise, what I've seen in schools who have left it up to one person to do that job is really, it becomes a story of, look what we did. Look, here was we had a maker space evening, and there are a few pictures in there. Or there was look, our science fair, and then maybe a video or so about how parents were crowding around all the students who are displaying and showing their projects. So it's more of a way to think about how can we document and how can we share in the appropriate platforms. How can we share learning? Who are we as a school? Who are we as professional learners? And to be able to, over time, tell that story through images, through audio, through video, through text, through transmedia, a mixture of all the different media. That's kind of the idea. How do you educate your stakeholders to be able to help you tell the story for you / with you? And how do you pull in admission and marketing and advancement of your schools to really tell a coherent story of what you are trying to convey and what you're trying to communicate with your stakeholders and the community at large. So for me, lead storytellers, they come from all different areas of your school, but they also have all different kinds of functions. And the best is if you have a mixture of all of these perspectives, I guess, that help tell that story of your school on these social media challenges. One of them being the documentarians, the ones of, look, these are the initiatives that we're working on. These are the things that are important to our school. The documentarians who can capture learning happening, who are able to share in different forms what they believe is an integral part of that story that you want to convey to the community. Another, I guess, role or perspective is the role of a scientist. That I believe we educators, we need to see ourselves more as researchers and need to see ourselves as somebody who is trying to find new ways, trying to navigate that uncharted territory that all of us are in, because again, change has happened so fast over the last years, last decades, that all of us don't know. We cannot rely on only on our experience. We need to test. We need to field test. We need to change variables. We need to really have that mindset of a researcher who's trying to advance the field of education. And a researcher, scientist, they never do their work in isolation. Once they found it, it's been documented. It's being shared with the rest of the scientific community if they have made a discovery that something works or something didn't work, in order for others to build upon that. And I think that's a really important piece of it for social media, to be able to connect and connect with others who are also researching and investigating where are we going in education. There's the perspective of the curator. There's so much information being thrown at us at all times. We need people who are able to curate, meaning to be able to read, be able to find, analyze and evaluate, and they are able to filter what's important, to be able to present in certain ways what we present in certain ways what we are, the story of what they are trying to, a story that is really not, give me one talking about the curators who are able to find information and present it to us in certain ways that that we normally would not have gotten to. They are able to connect to resources that are that we did not have access to, or we did not see it from that perspective. So, so that role of a curator becomes more and more important as part of the larger picture of who are the lead storytellers at your school. Another idea is the networkers in your schools, the networkers who are strategically making connections to other educators, to other schools, to others who are advancing and testing things out and having different initiatives. And these networkers, they are amplifying your message, they're amplifying your story, not just in the local community, but in a global community. And finally, they are the ambassadors that are come from your parent community, come from your board, come from community members who know and have been taught as well to contribute their perspective, their specific perspective to your school's story. Again, going back to Jill Berkowitz and Ann Myers, it's being able to tell a story for a cohesiveness of message. And I think this is super important as you're building your team in schools, to be able to have a unified message. Look at your school's mission statement, look at your school's core values, and which pretty much constitute the promise that you're making to your students' families, when they're sending their kids to your school. How can you give evidence that you are fulfilling that promise to them? How can you, again, look at your mission statement? What are some keywords, and how can you capture evidence that these values are being, that students will have these experiences at your school, and how can you share that story of fulfillment of these promises? So looking again, what do they do, these lead storytellers that we just kind of picked out, is they document institutional memory. They document just in general, more than one individual teacher can, or one social media coordinator can do it. It's a crowdsourcing effort, which I think is super important, to be able to tell a story that's not only from one area or from one perspective. It's to celebrate, really support and inspire not only the people in your learning community, in your schools, but also to connect, as you're trying to connect and amplify the reach of your school to learn with and from others in the global international school community. It's about communicating what's happening in education, to be able to share firsthand, look, we tried this and this worked out, and we're still learning, and we're looking to connect with others who are on a similar path. And how can we not reinvent the wheel, but how can we build upon each other? And it's really a community effort to be able to tell that story together and tell it through different types of media and disseminate it also through different types of platforms. How can you make the school's mission statement come to life? Those are really the ideas. I've had lots and lots of people ask me, so specifically, what are some ways that what's the content we should be putting out? And I've put together these 101 ideas for international schools and divided it pretty much up in different categories of, first, telling your school's story, to capturing learning, to sharing what types of professional development is happening at your school? What are your teachers learning? How can you show your community that your teachers are not stagnant, but they are lifelong learners? How can you use hashtags and memes to not just communicate with your stakeholders, but actually engage them, try to get interaction with them? How can you use social media for recruiting purposes, or support your expat families, your TCK kids, and use, and give them support as they're relocating potentially into, as new families into the school, the city, and country? How do you use social media for different perspectives? We already mentioned that information curation, and really use this engagement piece, which I think is interesting, to be able to amplify our traditional forms of communicating with our families. And I know this is very, very small, you can't read that, but if you want to put your name into the chat, I believe, and Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we have your email addresses as you signed up for the webinar. So if you just put your name in there, I'm going to make sure to send you the PDF file if you're interested in having these 101 ideas. Also, again, this is planting seeds for me, is if you've never heard of Transmedia Storytelling, it's worthwhile checking out, because it's a strategy that you need to start looking at creating these different entry points to be able to connect to the right target audience, no matter who they are in your school community. And being able to use a YouTube channel together with your Twitter feed, and being able to really connect with the right message on the right platform in a different media. Those are new skills that we need to develop as we are using social media in schools and using it to communicate. Other strategies is just really making sure it's not one-sided, to just send out the text on Twitter every single time, but potentially using QR codes, using augmented reality, using the different platforms, engaging through different types of social media techniques to entice and have your community generate content for you. Those are some strategies for you to look into. Other ideas is make sure it becomes visible. Make sure that learning and the story you're trying to tell, evidence of that, fulfilling that promise of whatever is in your school mission statement. Those are important pieces, and they all need to work together, that it becomes visible and your school community knows about it and works with it and contributes to it and engages with it. And I'm just going to finish up so we have some time for the question and answer session. Currently in 2018, because it could all disappear tomorrow or new tools can come up. Here just some of my favorite ones that I use to create content and to create different types of media, that helps with school branding, that helps with curating information, that helps with engaging the community, that helps with sharing evidence of learning happening in our school and the experience our students are having. These are just a few. There are many others. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Those are just the ones that I'm using. And then in the end, in 2018, these are the platforms right now that most schools are using, one or the other. But again, as transmedia storytelling and sharing, we should be looking at a cohesive story among all these different types of platforms. So I am going to kind of round the official presentation up, and we'll go into some of the questions that you had. Let me see if I can share the video again. And maybe I'll get started. I'll get started with a question that some of you already had as you were signing up for the webinar. As I was reading through them, I had kind of, there was a little pattern that was going on of questions that mostly had to do, how do you deal with privacy, privacy concerns? How do you deal with parents that might take over a WhatsApp chat? And all I can say at this, you are dealing with a shift in how we communicate. We're talking parents. I believe the answer is parent education. Again, they didn't grow up with this. They don't know the norms. They don't know the proper etiquette. And that is up to you as a school community to establish officially of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so I would go the route of parent education, involve them, make them become ambassadors in the process to help tell the story instead of taking it over from you. And Sharon, you, I think I'm reading here, who should control a WhatsApp chat? That's part of that mind shift. You can't control it. If you're controlling one chat, they're going to open up another one if they want to. So it's a mind shift of, you can't have the control of these things. And again, I believe the only next step is parent education. If they become aware of potentially of what they're doing and how they should be doing and what's appropriate. But I don't think we can continue holding on to the idea that we can control it, because we can't. And to address the other piece of privacy concerns, I believe somebody had asked, what do you do if parents put a video of other students, not just their own child, but other students out on social media? Again, there's nothing you can do about it. If they took the video, I mean, I guess you can contact them and say, please take that down. It's parent education. On one end is that, you know, in our community, we prefer you wouldn't do that because out of privacy concerns. And secondly, I would be talking to, again, parent community, but also student body. Nowadays, you have to know that anytime you are in a different space, anytime somebody has a cell phone with them, a recording device, potentially you will be on that, in that picture, on that video, you will be there. So what does that mean as part of how will you behave? How will you deal with when you are on a video or you see yourself and you did not give permission? It's all a mind shift, and we need to start looking at that to be able to know how to deal with it. I don't think you can control it. We've gone way past that point, but we have to be careful about it. Derek, do you have any other questions from the chat that you've seen?
Yes, one would be about going back to storytelling and the team, and what should parents be on it, and how do you bring them in? What role should they be in as part of the storytelling team?
Absolutely. If you have, parents are part of your ambassador team, and I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly how. I heard somebody say, you know, you can tell as many, you know, stand up on a soapbox and say, look at the rock star that I am. It's not as worth as much if somebody else says, oh yeah, they're a rock star. So it's this whole idea of finding ambassadors who will help tell the story with/for you. That's what you want to do. And how can you get them on the team is through education, of having meetings with them and talking about, so how can you support us? How can you help tell us the story of the experience that your children are having at the school, and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and how it can be submitted, and how it can be shared. And again, you can't even control it. Don't think with the mindset they will have to send it to you until a committee approves it, and then it goes up officially on your social media channel. So it's more about how can they add a hashtag to it that you connect to the overall, the crowdsourced storytelling on social media. Yes.
Great. And another question has to do with teachers, Facebook or social media. And should a school...
Derek, I can't hear you. Okay, I'm hoping I'm not the one who just got kicked out, but I'm thinking I understand what you're trying to say. For teachers, should they be able to put content up on their social media accounts? I think that's one a little bit more that you can control by setting a policy. I'm in favor of teachers, if they have a private Facebook account, they should keep it private, and there shouldn't be student work or student footage content on there. You can ask them to have two separate ones, a professional one and a personal one. One of my recommendations. Otherwise, to talk about privacy issues. Well, how will the school handle it? As I said, you can't control parents, what they choose or not choose to share. But you need to be able to let your teachers know what the school expects. And Maddie asked, what are some legal liabilities with content? I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you legal advice here. I do know that, especially in Europe now, they're getting ready to with laws for privacy of sharing data with on social media or just in general online. So you're going to have to check where you live. Again, my perspective at this point is we are sharing content, academic content. We are not sharing kids going to the movies, or we are looking to tell the story of learning. We are looking to tell the story of an experience in an academic environment. So the content itself is supposed to contribute to the student learning. It's supposed to contribute to the whole overall learning of the school community. So so far, if you focus on that, and if that's the content that you are creating, then you shouldn't have any liabilities or problems. But again, I am not a lawyer and definitely don't know all the legal for the different countries. And I'm not sure if Derek is back on or not.
Hi, Silvia. Sorry, I thought it was on your end and it ended up being me. So I'm glad the meeting didn't end. And the answer was, the question was answered. So I appreciate that. I also lost chat. So if anybody asked a question, I don't have it at the moment. So.
Yeah, so I don't
it
see.
May be
yeah.
Maybe a good time to end. And, we'll be back in touch with everyone through sending out the email from Silvia with the 101 social media ideas, as well as a link to the video, which will be available in the next, probably in the next few hours, or maybe it may take up to a day, because we do post it on our YouTube channel for AAIE. And any last words from you, Silvia?
Last words is, we have to model the literacies. Social media is an amazing platform for being exposed to, be practicing, and becoming literate to be able to read and write in all these different forms. And we have to model that for our students. The last generation, they kind of got lost in the middle because all schools went on lockdown and like, oh, we're not dealing with this, and let's lock down, you know, not Facebook not allowed, this is not allowed, that's not allowed. And I think we need to shift. We need to shift from being afraid to using it as a tool for learning, which that I think it is. And what better way for a school to do that as to model it, and to model it for real purpose, for the entire school community. So I think those are my famous last words, to make sure that we become literate to be able to model for the rest.
Great. Thank you all for joining, and thank you again, Silvia. We look forward to seeing you all at other webinars. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thanks.